and gentlemen, welcome to the show. You are listening to Game Club from Wannabe Critic Productions, and today we have a very special episode as we are interviewing Darren Korb, the sound director for SuperGiant Games. And accompanying me, if you've been paying attention, actually, you wouldn't have been able to pay attention because we're going to release this episode first to kick off this new series of the SuperGiant games that we've been reviewing the past. How long has it been, Jacob? Almost a year?
It's been like a year. We've had really bad scheduling, but yeah, we've been playing the games over the course of a year.
Yeah, so here we are. But Darren, I wanted to throw it to you. How you feeling tonight, man?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. Of course, we sat down, it's been almost a year ago also. We had you on the Wannabe Critic podcast. It was just you and I, and that was a really fun question. And again, I didn't get to ask like half the questions that I wanted to the first time, so I was super happy that you agreed to come back and let us geek out with you a little bit more. So we're really appreciative, and we're happy to have you here. So
awesome.
Yeah, I notice you have a busy kit going on in the background. Have you been drumming recently? Is that what's been going on?
Well, yeah, I mean that's my son's kit right there. My kit, I have an electronic kit over just that way. But yeah, no, I mean drumming is a lot of fun. I do it as much as I can. It's gonna be hopefully, I don't think my kid's going to listen to this. We got a lot of instrument stuff going on for the holidays. So hopefully it's half for him, but like half for me too, kind of,
Nice. Nice.
So
Yeah.
I'll benefit from all of his holiday gifts this year. So
yeah, it's always, it's always good to make it a family affair for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, obviously the main reason we wanted to have you on tonight, we're going to be asking a lot of questions, kind of around SuperGiant's legacy and kind of all this stuff, all things pertaining to SuperGiant. But the main thing that we wanted to kind of talk about was this wonderful, vinyl that's coming out. And I was hoping that I would have mine on hand to be able to show it off. And like every day, like I get home from work and I'm like, I call my wife like 10 minutes before I get home, like, did you check the mail? She's like, no. I'm like, did my record come? She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, God, I just like hang up on her, So I've just been anxiously waiting for it.
yeah.
And I even convinced Jacob, you bought a special edition one too, right?
Amazing.
Yeah, so Gabe approached me to do this series after I played Hades. Hades was my first SuperGiant game. I loved it. And he's like, you really have to check out these other games. Let's do a full series on it. And also, you should buy this right now because it's going to sell out really quick. In retrospect, you're going to want to have bought it.
Yeah.
And he's 100% right. After playing through every game now, it's the easiest purchase I could have ever made. Now, I collect vinyl already.
Yeah.
And then also seeing that you signed it,
Yeah.
I'm like, it just blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah, and
awesome.
it's just gorgeous vinyl too. Like I'm super
I hope
duper
it shows
excited.
up soon. I hope it shows up soon. I know they're really busily shipping them all out of the warehouse and just kind of trying as fast as they can to fulfill all the pre-orders and everything. But
Yeah, well, however long it takes is however long it takes. But ladies and gentlemen, I'll probably show it off on Twitter or something like that, so you can follow me on Twitter or Jacob if you don't want to hear me ramble on about God knows what. So. Anyways, we're super excited for that to come out. Obviously, that was the one that got recorded at Abbey Road.
Yeah.
And we have a few questions around that we wanted to kind of start with. We'll ask like some questions kind of pertaining to the games themselves.
Mhm.
And then we have some just like fun kind of general questions. Well, some are fun, but I don't know. I think we went a little too deep with these questions now that I'm looking at them. But, it's like whenever you like set up to do an interview, you want to be like, no, this is critical. Like, this is going to be great. You know what I mean? So I think a collective question that Jacob and I both kind of had, there's a plethora of great music found within the SuperGiant games. And I do want to preface something. The one aspect of SuperGiant that I've always kind of kept up with has been the music. I had dabbled in all of the games, but I hadn't actually beaten. I'm still working my way through Hades, and I suck at the game, which is why it's taking so long. But we're hot off the heels of Pyre, and having played Transistor and Pyre now, these games mean a lot. The games mean a lot more, but the music means a lot more too at the same time. Cool. So I think a big question that we both had was, how did you go about choosing the songs? Like, how did that kind of happen?
Well, I feel like my main background is in songwriting. That's sort of where I come from as a composer is songwriting. And so it's something that seems like if there is an opportunity to incorporate songs, we want to create those opportunities and have moments where there can be a song to add something meaningful to the experience. And it's something that we've done in each game and sort of decided that it's a thing that we really enjoy doing and like finding moments like that in the games. And so the songs themselves really are meant to enhance a particular gameplay moment or convey something that would be hard to convey otherwise, or express a particular aspect of the tone or the theme. And for each game, the songs serve a slightly different function, right? I mean, in Bastion, the songs are sort of folk songs of the place. In Transistor, there are songs written by one particular artist, and they're meant to express that person and what that person writes about and what she thinks about, and aspects of that person's world seen through her eyes. And then in Pyre, they're sort of, they're these sort of bards telling the story of what's happening with you and these histories and things like that. And so they all have a little bit of a different vibe. And kind of in Hades, they're more like particular songwriters writing these songs, but with a little bit of a mix. Some of the Pyre techniques in there too. So in each game they serve a particular function, and for me it's about finding the best way I can to enhance the story, enhance the game, enhance particular moments of the game, and just find a nice place for a song with lyrics to slot into. Because I feel like if you misuse a song with lyrics, or if you put it anywhere willy-nilly, it could potentially detract from either the gameplay or the song. You it's hard to maybe focus on both things depending on how it's used. So we try to have moments for the songs that have lyrics.
You have something, Jake? Go ahead. You look like
No, I didn't.
I
think I was curious about, when selecting the songs, that Transistor obviously has a lot of lyrics, right? And the selection is weighted towards Transistor, the song Songs of SuperGiant.
You mean, I'm sorry, was the question about on the vinyl specifically?
Yes.
Oh gosh. Jeez,
No worries.
I answered a whole other question. I'm so sorry.
I learned a lot, though. I learned
Yeah,
a lot.
same. I was like, God, I love this guy. It's awesome.
for the so for the vinyl, we picked, more or less, we picked the songs that we felt would translate the best to the orchestral format from each of these games. And from Bastion, it's pretty much all of the songs from the game rolled into one. For Transistor, there were a lot more songs in that game. For Pyre, we picked songs that we thought would translate well and be fun to do, and weren't 10 minutes long or whatever. We were trying to keep it concise for a set. Was originally how this was conceived. It was conceived for a live set, so we wanted to make an entertaining set list. Was sort of part of the goal for the song selection. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how we picked the songs for the record, was just going through and kind of thinking about, well, what are the ones that would be fun to perform in this context. And a song like She Shines, for example, which isn't really in Transistor at all, was one we really wanted to do just because we thought it would translate really well and sound awesome, and would be a lot of fun for us to do in this context.
On the topic of performance, right? You selected these around performance. I've seen these songs performed now in different settings, but it's been a select few. As someone who loves these and would love to see them live, is there any, and I know you like to perform, you have your own band, is there any desire to take this on a bigger tour ever across the country to places like Phoenix, Arizona,
or Branson, Missouri?
Yeah,
Branson, Missouri.
I mean, yeah, Dollywood, maybe, but no, it's one of those things where a tour is like a fun, attractive idea to me as someone who's never really done it. I tried to do like a mini tour with a band back in the day, but part of it is I keep real busy as the audio director at SuperGiant, so we're always working on something. So the idea of taking like multiple weeks off in a row to just tour, to like do work, take a time off to work, doing a different kind of work, is just something that seems like it would be hard to do for me, or something that I would have trouble kind of committing to. So I could certainly see us doing like more one-off things in the future when it feels kind of safe COVID wise to us.
Right.
I could certainly see myself. I mean, because I love performing and it's super fun, and Ashley and I have a great time performing. So yeah, I mean, I think, but the tour thing, I've been asked this question a couple times, and yeah, it's like if it were a commitment of like a more than a week or so, it's like, man, that's a lot of time. I don't know. It's sort
It's
of
like
my
we're
feeling
gonna
about it.
tour at 4 different locations in San Francisco. Can
Yeah,
you make it?
yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of stems too from like Hades, just the guitar, you just shred on Hades, and wanting to see that live is where that comes from for me.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that would be. I mean, the Hades stuff. I've performed a couple of the tunes. One tune in the orchestral context and a couple of them in the acoustic context from Hades. But yeah, I haven't done any really rockin' shows of the SuperGiant music, and it's something that I've pondered. I mean, it would be super fun to do, and I think they'd translate pretty well to a live context, like a rockin' kind of thing. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it would involve a lot of
effort,
a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're telling me we're not gonna see you at the Game Awards, ripping around like Mick Gordon, solo, like doing like front kicks and
I mean,
all that.
it would involve a bunch of coordination and work and stuff, and a lot of musicians that I would need to connect with that
Right.
I'm not currently connected with, and a lot of just it would just involve a lot of pieces that would be hard to wrangle for me, especially because it's not my like full-time thing that
Right.
I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, it would be a blast. I'd love to do something like that if the opportunity came up.
Maybe whenever the next game comes out and it's like exploded and it's like a household name, everyone has it. Maybe, on the topic of kind of collaborating with other, musicians, I had a question about Austin Wintry because I don't think I really got the full, because I've moved kind of into the world. Obviously, I sent you some of my music. You listened to it and you sent me very detailed notes, and I was like reading it like you like actually listened to it, And I have to ask a question, whenever I get an idea in my head, right, and you go to like start tinkering with it and you start like making it and like you want to put all these pieces together, it's like, wow, this like really came together. Did you have him like kind of transpose a lot of these songs, or did you work with him directly to kind of transpose some of these songs to correlate directly with an orchestra, or did you just have him kind of there directing, doing his thing?
So for the record, Austin helped me sort of shepherd the project, and he sort of co-produced the record with me and the sort of performance. As someone personally, I've never really worked with orchestras before this at all in any context, and Austin does that all the time, and he is a guy who he was very enthusiastic about the project. We're friends, and he just was like, yes, I'm in, let's do this, what do you need, I'll help. And so he hooked me up with this arranger named Brian LaGuardia, who he had worked with a few times in the past, who's really good and just did an awesome job. Austin helped me. He was like the other principal feedback giver for Brian, essentially. When Brian, I gave him some notes. Like, here's the ensemble that we're going to try to work with. These are all the instruments we have. This is the goal. We don't want to have a, I was really interested in translating the songs, not directly. Like, I wanted them to feel like they were kind of uniquely crafted for this context instead of just it's the recorded arrangement translated to other instruments. I didn't really want to do that. I didn't want to have a drum kit. I didn't want to have, that kind of, I wanted to actively avoid that stuff. So
you built it from the ground up, basically, because I mean, as well as I do how easy it is to just literally take a MIDI track and be like, oh, I wonder how it would sound with this instrument, and you don't have to redo it, and it sounds cool, but it's not the same thing as actually like, recreating something. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Jacob put this question on here. We had seen the pictures of like the announcement of all the records going out, and you signing them. Like, what like prompted that? Was like, yeah, why not? Like, that'd be a cool thing to do. And out of curiosity, about how many times did you sign that record, Darren?
Well, so on the limited editions, when we sold them, we said they were going to be signed. So that was the thing that prompted me to do it.
Oh,
Was that
gotcha.
that's what we promised, and I signed over 1,000 of them because that's how many we made, and then I signed some extras in case there's we had like a little small overrun just in case there's breakage or something. So I signed some more, but yeah, I signed somewhere 1,000 plus.
Nice.
You brought up I mean, obviously the use of a full orchestra is somewhat new, right? And that experience at Abbey Road and kind of putting that together, does that change or at least adjust how you are approaching your next project from potentially forever more full orchestral, I guess on like a first draft kind of basis?
It's interesting because for me, the orchestra still isn't like, I feel like I could write for orchestra if I had a specific goal of doing that for something. But it's not my thing I'm going to use as my go-to, probably just because it's not really my comfort zone. I sometimes I try to branch out and push out of my comfort zone deliberately depending on the project. And just try to write on an instrument I don't play well, for example, or do a new guitar tuning that I've never used before. So all the chords that I know don't work, and I have to kind of use my ears and try to relearn and experiment more. And so in that sense, I think it could be a fun thing to try at some point. But it would really depend on the context. For me, it's all about trying to serve whatever the project is and trying to whatever thing seems like it's going to be the coolest for that context is the thing I want to try to pursue, relative to my, sort of triangulated with my own kind of set of abilities that I'm confident in, or maybe something that I have a goal to try to incorporate.
I like hearing you say that because, it seems like you would go for that particular like out there type vibe if it was right for the project. Like I think about, on Setting Sail Coming Home, that song, to my knowledge, right, I believe is played in Dadgad, correct?
It's like Dadgad down a whole step. So
right.
It's
yeah. It's like
FGC. Yeah.
Right. It's like CAG.
Yeah.
So like, I play that song all the time. I play it at shows. Like I probably owe you some money, for playing it. But I love that song. Like I will play that song for people to kind of like be like, yeah, this is from a video game. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
people are like, what? But was that like a native tuning for you already, or did you kind of just like experiment with that? Like, is that kind of one of those instances where you're like, oh, that's dope, I want to try and like make something in this tuning?
For that tuning, I'd been messing around with that tuning for a few years, actually before working on Bastion. Like I remember I was probably in college when I started messing around with Dadgad a bunch, and I'd written some songs in Dadgad just because it's fun and it makes you approach the instrument differently. You can get some really interesting kind of rich chords and stuff, and fun like open things where you fret some notes but leave a bunch of stuff open and it just sounds cool.
Well, I mean, like that song is like what literally, like that's what I play in because of that song.
Yeah. It's a blast. I love it. And so I had been messing around in Dadgad for a few years before starting Bastion. A handful of years. It's something that, that particular tuning was one I'd used before, but definitely on Hades, like I made up tunings and stuff. Like I had some crazy tunings, like Out of Tartarus is some insane tuning. It's like, I forget. I think it was like G. It's like just weird, like just crazy,
super like
tuned
deep.
all messed up. Like it was G like up. I tuned the E like up to G, and then the A I tuned down to G, and I had a bunch of G's.
Wow. Okay.
Because part of it is that riff I wrote on a different instrument. I wrote that on a balama, which has this funky tuning, and it's like played open, like you'd play like an open kind of rock riff, like an open kind of bouncy metal or rock riff, but it's on a kind of a Turkish folk instrument. And then I tried to translate that back to the guitar, and so I had to like figure out the way to do the open tuning effectively.
Nice. Yeah, that was I love sidebars. Like I love whenever I'm like, oh, I gotta ask that. It's not on the list, but I have to. You know what I mean?
It all went over my head. I am not musically inclined. I'm in the graces of you guys. I can play Clocks by Coldplay on the piano, and that's it.
There you
I
go.
Can't do anything more. And play Rock
Jacob's
Band,
like, Jacob's like, ha ha ha. You know.
Dad who? Dad who?
Yeah.
Nice. That's all I have for these Songs of SuperGiant questions. Did you have anything else you wanted to ask Jacob before we moved on to the game questions?
Nope, that covers it.
So we're hot off the heels of Pyre, and there had been a time where I had like watched all of the no clip documentaries, like boom, 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 and they just kind of ran together, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like at one point in time I heard somebody, it might have been either Imran or Greg, say that this was like Pyre was like the hardest game for you guys to make type thing, or at that time it might have been like one of the most challenging, like labors of love type thing. Did I remember that correctly? Because I mean, would you say it was the most challenging to kind of work on?
I think. Well, so Amir is I think the person you're referring to. So
Amir. Sorry, not Imran.
Yeah. So I think Pyre was a funky one. It was one, I don't know that it felt as hard working on Pyre as it did working on Transistor. Transistor was one that really we felt we really had to work hard at, and Pyre certainly was hard in its own way, but I think we didn't. A lot of us kind of just went nuts, so to speak, like kind of went where our spirits took us for that game to a degree, I think. So part of the challenge, I think, for Pyre was trying to make it all, find the right balance for a game that had like kind of some disparate elements, to try to like marry that together and try to make it all kind of flow into itself and to have all the components feel like as if they are part of a whole piece,
I want to ask a question from like the audio director side of you when it comes to Pyre, and how, from my perception, this is the most dialogue in any of the games so far up to this point, right? Mm-hmm. Was the choice to do different languages due to the constraint of that? And because I've read different things, and as I learn about game design more, there's just that creativity that comes out of constraint. I just love finding out about those details. And I was curious when I read that and saw those different languages, and I was curious if that correlated at all to just the vast amount of dialogue in Pyre.
Yeah, more or less it was a practical reason, because we just didn't think we'd be able to record that much voiceover. We just didn't at the time, and it was our first game that had a bunch of voiced characters and a big cast of characters. So I was comfortable directing actors who weren't Logan in a different made up language, because it's just, there's not, this level of scrutiny is not going to be as high, it's so I felt comfortable, like, okay, well, these performances can sit in a game with Logan's performance and it'll be fine. I'm not as concerned about that. So that felt like something that was a little bit safer than trying to fully voice a game and cast this game with the big cast of characters when we just hadn't done that yet. That being said, doing that in this sort of strange way on Pyre did give me the confidence to go ahead and do it in a fully voiced game that was fully voiced in English on Hades. So several people who we worked with on Pyre came back and worked with us on Hades as well.
Didn't Logan do like a crazy amount of the characters inside of Pyre? How many was it? Like quite a few.
In Pyre,
right?
he did. Gosh, I want to say like four-ish, and in Hades he does 6.
Was he the announcer too?
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, I was like, I couldn't remember if I got that detail right.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't have time to go back and watch, but that was so iconic. Like, the difference between Rux and him, with this very like outlandish, like talking, and it's like, is that the same dude? It freaking is, like, and Jacob had tweeted out a picture of his ending, of the ending that he got in Pyre. Everyone's kind of like standing in the distance, and yada yada yada, and it made me think. I just lost my train of thought a little bit, but he had like tweeted it out, and it just kind of made me you know, like happy that. Oh, you had said like the team at SuperGiant super talented.
Yeah.
And like I had been playing Pyre and like had seen that tweet, and I was like, yeah, like this game is just so full of just unique life. I've never played a game like it in my entire life. You know, maybe Oregon Trail, but even then, like it's not really. It doesn't do it justice, you know, and it's just it just speaks to the talent you know that you all have there.
Well, thank you.
I wanted to move on to Bastion. You know, whenever you think about Bastion through Hades, obviously I've played Bastion like 15 times or something like that, crazy. And we had when we had reviewed that game, Jacob was able to like pull a lot of like deeply rooted like things. There was a lot of things that connected for me with that game that I didn't even really realize. Like a tornado had come through my town and like blown it away. The year that I played that game, and I had never connected like the calamity with that particular thing, and that being like an underlying thing that made that such a big deal, you know, in my life. And it was like, man, yeah, now I love Bastion even more. Awesome. but for you, you know, whenever you think about the process of, you know, the beginning, kind of getting your teeth cut a little bit on Bastion, to now we fast forward to Hades, which is obviously hugely successful. There's no need to be humble about it. And, you know, the difference in creative process for each game, what would you go back and tell yourself? Because you were my age, right? You were like 26 or something like that when you made Bastion or something like that, right? So what would you go back and tell your like 27-year-old self getting started in that world?
Yeah, I guess I was 27 when it came out. Yeah, I was 27 when it came out. When I started working on it, I was probably 25-ish. But yeah, I mean, you know, the thing that's interesting for me is that my creative process hasn't changed a lot since then. The thing that's changed is mostly just practice doing it. I've gained confidence doing it. I've practiced doing it a lot. And, you know, the thing that I've managed to remove from the creative process, not fully, obviously, because you never can, but more, it's just some of the creative anxiety, the sort of existential paralysis and dread associated with creating things, you know, and just trying to make them as good as you can. And I've managed, you know, for me, I've managed to keep it fun and make it even more fun over time, I think, is sort of the thing. And I don't know that I'm sort of happy with the path that's gotten me to the place I am now creatively. And I don't know that I would want to tell myself anything, because, you know, it's the butterfly effect and all that. You know? But I think, you know, don't worry so much is probably be a good advice. You know, don't worry, you'll be fine.
It is the hardest thing too. Like when you sit down.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've made a lot of music, and I mean a lot since the last time we sat down. It's like you always do try and make it the best it can be.
Yeah.
And you kind of go through like you said, like this dread, right, of kind of like going through this thing, and then someone comes along and tells you it's great, and you're just like, get out. Like, don't tell me I'm good. Get out. Like, I feel like an imposter, because deep down inside, like, I might think it sounds really good, but I don't want to hear anyone else say it. You know what I mean? So, like, I totally get kind of what you're saying, and but I mean, with each game, I think at least sound wise and music wise, like we've seen that kind of evolve. You know, the emotion evoking, you know, moments in those games, and the very pointed moments in those games where it's like, boom, like we're gonna hit you with this right now. Like for me, a really emotional part was, I struggled with Pyre. Like I really did, trying to finish it. It took me forever.
Yeah.
And whenever you lift off and the song plays and you know your journey's about to come to an end, and you're flying towards that, you know, the last star for the last time, and it's like, dang it. You know what I mean? Like you just you feel it, you know? And it's really you know, it's a cool thing to see how that evolution has taken place, and how it hasn't missed yet for me. So
awesome.
Jacob, did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
I didn't have anything there.
So let's move on to Transistor just for a second. So, you know, I don't know if you like to cook, but I love to cook.
I do, yeah.
Okay, so you know as well as I do, like you can cook stuff for yourself and like you take pride in it and it's good. Like I like to make like a nice bowl of ramen or something like that, and do my thing, make it all fancy. But it's a million times better when you prepare it for somebody else and they
Mhm.
enjoy it,
Yeah.
right? And you're like,
Yeah.
I know, right? It's pretty good. So I think about it, like since you had such an extensive working relationship with Ashley Barrett, did you find yourself having maybe a little more fun composing music that was designed to kind of complement her within Transistor? Was that kind of like a new avenue of creating music for you, or is like, yeah, like I'm literally making this for you type thing?
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. For me, it was Transistor had a lot of its own sort of unique challenges for us as a team, and for me specifically, I just, it's like that thing where a band has their entire lives to make their first album and then like 2 years to make their second or whatever it is. And so a lot of the thing, your creative preoccupations and the things that are just sort of part of you can put into that first thing. And if you want to do something different for the second thing, you have to sort of rediscover and create new things. And really, like, for Bastion, we really leaned into the stuff that we felt like we could execute. And that's what a lot of that game is filled with, is stuff that we felt we could do. And then branching out from the stuff that is comfortable is a lot of what we had to do on Transistor, at least for me creatively. So even though it's a style of music that I was into and enjoyed a lot, it's not a kind of music I'd made a bunch of before that. So it took me a minute to really kind of adjust to the vibe of that game and sort of triangulate what I was trying to do musically and creatively there. And the thing that was really unique for me about that project, and is still pretty unique in the project sense, is that it's from a particular character's point of view. All the music is written by Red. All the music in the whole game was sort of how I thought about it. It's all Red's music. So I had to really do a pretty deep character dive on Red and the world and try to really understand what that world was like and how she saw that world and how that would cause her to interpret that into song. And I looked at artists that I felt had qualities that we wanted Red to have. Imogen Heap and Bjork and like Radiohead, and like artists that when you listen to them, you get chills down your spine and you feel like they have some sort of special insight into like how music is connected to feelings and how to express themselves through music, and they have like some other kind of third eye that can see stuff that nobody else sees. And when you hear it, you're like, oh, of course. So it's like that's like a pretty tough goal, I feel like, creatively. So certainly it was like one of those where I really kind of pulled my hair out a little bit at the beginning of that project. But once I kind of felt like I figured out her musical point of view and the tone of what I wanted the music to be, it certainly got easier. Writing specifically for Ashley, I'd done that for Build That Wall. I wrote that with her in mind, because I had worked with her on a like a little demo project previously, and I thought, what, she would be great for this, and sure enough, she was. She was down and she did an awesome job. So I had written for her before, and I think for me it was like writing these songs, I didn't feel like I was necessarily writing them for Ashley, to sing. I mean, I was writing them for Ashley to sing, but I really felt like I was trying to write them. I was trying to embody Red as much as possible, writing those tunes.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Go ahead, Jacob.
No, I love that. And the reference point of Imogen Heap, like that, I do see that so much now. And it's cool to see that there's, a deeper inspiration to like our music, modern music, whatever it is, in these other worlds. And I had a goofy question in relation to Hades on this topic. So Zag, clearly angsty. He's got his issues, daddy issues there.
Sure.
And I was curious, were there any inspirations for him musically? Because when I look at him, he likes punk rock, in my opinion. That's what I see. I might be projecting too. He's got some emo vibes.
Yeah.
But was that ever thought about? Because you are Zag, right? I mean, did you ever think about harnessing that angsty through some music at all?
Yeah, for me, the Zag in the score, if I had to like pick up kind of Peter and the Wolf representation for Zag, it's the electric guitar in the score. He is the sort of engine of the rock in that game. I feel like, I mean, it takes place in hell, so you have to have rock and metal. But I feel like for me, Zag sort of represents that. And Zag is an interesting dude because I feel like he's on the surface very kind of, he has an edge to him, and he seems like he's like quippy and kind of glib and stuff, but he's a really sweet dude who goes out of his way to help people and really like has these sort of admirable goals, and that are I mean, he wants to connect with his mom, and he has these sort of sentimental qualities to him. And so he's certainly like, his aesthetic is, he has an edge to him, but and I think the surface of his personality represents that too. But he really, I think, has, if you go down a little bit, he's very, sort of soft inside. Got a hard exterior.
So he likes Enya, basically.
Yeah. Well, so no, I mean,
Enya's great.
And so I did try to represent, the sort of hard rock aspect of the score is sort of, for me, in my mind, was sort of Zag's. That's like his component. It's like that's what I wanted the player to feel, was that Zag is sort of driving the emotion of those moments in the music.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting to hear you talk about, like, he's not like I mean, he is BA, but like, he's not like, malicious or like mean or nothing like his father, right? Like nothing like what we would expect. At the point that I'm in the game, I just found out, I just had my first flashback. I can't even freaking beat Meg. All right. Like I've beaten her one time. Okay.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
I'm struggling.
There's no shame in turning on God mode too.
That's what I did. That's what I did. I had to. I'm like, I'm gonna beat this freaking game.
Keep it on, and it'll get easier and easier. You'll get there. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
Okay. Zag is a character, though, as you described that. It's such a, like, I picture myself in Zag sometimes as like that. Again, it's angsty at that point in life. There's the heart's there, but they're going through something, and they manifest maybe outwardly as edgy, but deep down it's still that Zag. And
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jake. No, go ahead, Gabe. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, for me, the more I would play, and just like some of the delivery, which great. Out of all the interviews that I've listened to of you, no one ever asked you about being like the main character in Hades. No one really ever asked you that. I mean, maybe a few have, but just like some of the delivery and some of the stuff he says, I'm like, why does this guy remind me of Luke Skywalker a little bit? Like, just with like kind of him making his way, and it's like, oh, like, I can't believe I messed that up, or just like his internal dialogue to himself and stuff. And that kind of makes sense, him being on like this wholesome journey to like, find these things out. It's cool to hear you talk about.
I can see some of the parallels too, because Luke is angsty, and feels like he's got he's trying to escape where he's from, and there's some parallels for sure. Yeah, I can see that.
I was gonna go to Toshi Station and get some power converters.
Oh God, Emperor.
Oh God. I think that's all the questions we have, just pertaining directly to the game. So now we have some just kind of general questions. We're making good time, gentlemen. I just wanted to point that out.
Sweet.
So, Darren, are you having a good time? That's my prime. That is my prime. No matter who it is. Sometimes Jacob Busch comes on, and I want to make sure he's comfortable. That's my
I have the worst time when I'm on this podcast. This is a good one. This is a really good one.
He's finally on a good one. Why don't you take the lead on this one, Jacob?
Well, so again, go ahead and stop this question if you must, but you were talking about in Hades, it was that Turkish instrument that really inspired a lot of that soundtrack. Mm-hmm. Is there any fascination you have with a specific instrument right now for anything you're working on in the future, or has that not hit yet?
Well, I mean, we still don't really know what's going on next. For us, that's kind of still up in the air. But I have sort of towards the end of Hades became very interested in analog synthesizers, which I had sort of it's like, it's too much stuff. I don't want to get into that. And then I started kind of getting into it. And I'm like, oh, this is really fun. I like this a lot. So, not specifically for a project, but I am like really fascinated by analog synths. And you can see I have one right here behind me.
Yeah, it's pretty dope.
So
Transistor 2 is confirmed, basically.
Not related to any project. I'm just enjoying the synthesizers.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Jacob.
Is this oh, okay, yeah. So during the process, I watched some of the No Clip documentaries, but when you're making the music for a game, at what stage are you writing the music? Is it during, like, is it pre the game development? Is it throughout the whole process? Is it after the game's made? When are you actually sitting down and writing the music?
Yeah, so it's basically throughout the entire development. And the first thing I do on a project is start writing music. So as soon as we have an idea for what the project might be and what the setting is going to be, what the tone and the setting and all these things that we're thinking about, sort of high level ideas, I'll go off and I'll start writing some music just to try and see if I can express some of that in music and figure out what the game might sound like. And that's happening at the same time that Jen is concepting art and figuring out what the look of the game might be, and design is prototyping, and we're kind of doing it all in tandem, And so and then I write throughout the entire project essentially, because there's our games in general are developed serially, and so when we get to the next section of the game, we need music for that part, and we need to flesh that out, and so I do it when we get there and kind of go sequentially, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that would seem, it's like, okay, you're not gonna start whatever song, you're not gonna start Setting Sail, Coming Home, or whatever at the beginning of the process and then come back to it's like, oh, maybe I'll get to that in a little bit. No, you're gonna try and get it done. Go ahead, Jacob.
But in film, right? Isn't film usually scored after most of the film is cut? So I was just curious with game development if there was a difference, and it sounds like significant difference.
Well, and there is a difference in game development from the way we do it a lot of times too. Like, I have the privilege of being an in-house composer that is involved with the development of the game the entire time, or not just composer. I mean, I do all the audio and a lot of times a composer or sound designers will be brought in pretty late in a project when most of the stuff is kind of already set and figured out and decided. So I know in the past, and sometimes still, games are a little bit more like film in that way, where composers often brought in kind of towards the end of the project. But I think more and more it's becoming a little bit more common for composers to be integrated a little bit earlier these days. And I certainly count my blessings that I'm able to do that, because it would be way harder, I think, to come in and just try to slot into something, come at
the tail end.
Yeah, and I think there's an opportunity for the music to really help centralize what the team is feeling about the thing creatively, or at least synthesize with other members of the team. Like, our team will hear this music and then they will produce something, and then I will see that and I'll be like, oh, I want to go and do, and it'll help. I think that's something that's hard to quantify, but is a really cool thing that can happen.
So with that, then, this is a question I had for later. With that, whenever you're kind of working on stuff, drafting things, demoing stuff, have you ever presented something to the team and they were like, yeah, that's not what we were thinking, like, at all? Or do you kind of get, like, final say? It's like, hey, this is what we're doing. Like, how does that whole process kind of work?
Yeah, I'm always open to feedback from the team, and earlier on, particularly on the first couple of games, I would seek feedback more actively and would expect to get feedback a little bit more actively. And on Bastion, I was contracting, at the beginning of Bastion, I was sort of, they'd say, hey, we try and make some music for these kind of contexts, and we need some sound effects for these kind of contexts, and I would go off and experiment, and the first piece I made they dug, and they had some thoughts about it, but really like the second piece I made, and then from then on there were not a ton of notes. It's like triangulating early on, and when I started working on Bastion, I made a few pieces that were sort of when I started working on Transistor, I made a few pieces that were sort of experimental, trying to figure out what the vibe was, and I was still sort of in the Bastion mindset. And I did get a note which was helpful for me to get at that moment, which was that, well, it was maybe a little too close, or had too much in common with the Bastion vibe, and we wanted to try and do something that was a little bit more tonally different. And that was really helpful for me at that time. And now I sort of have internalized, I think, enough of the kinds of feedback that I don't get a lot of feedback these days. Frankly, I'll make something that is as good as I can make it and seems cool to me. And if it passes my bar and I put it in the game, and people dig it, then that's kind of the end usually. The end of the feedback loop. Sometimes I'll get notes, but honestly, it's at least for Hades, it was like very few notes.
Your gauge of cool is really good. I just have to say that.
Oh, thank you.
If you're the one who's putting the final say on that, your gauge of cool is perfect, even where it's at.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm pretty hard to please. So if I like it, I feel like it must be okay if I like it, because I'm a real I'm like a real grouch. Yeah,
I send two pages or 2 songs to Darren Korb, and he sends me 4 pages of notes. And I'm like, awesome. I do suck. I knew it. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. No, it was awesome. So like with that, it's nice hearing you kind of talk about then, like, what, kind of moving into another question, like, do you ever feel pressured to like outdo yourself, and it's like, oh yeah, that was dope, but like on this next one though, like like you're not ready, you know what I mean? Like, do you ever feel yourself kind of trying to do that, or do you just kind of go with the flow? It's like whatever ends up being the end product, it's like, no, this feels right, like this is what it is. Like, what do you think?
My primary interest is really serving the project, and I have some sub goals usually of, I would like to branch out creatively, do something that's interesting or exciting or different for me, and stretches my comfort zone in some way. And that's something that I really want to do on every project. But the primary thing for me is really just what's going to feel good in context with this game, what's going to help enhance the world and help immerse the player, and what's going to create the vibe of this unique setting. And so, yeah, I'm interested in trying to do stuff I've never done before to some degree, or stuff that is, just outside of my comfort zone, or far enough that I think I can maybe reach and grab it, but and that's another interest of mine. So like outdoing myself, I mean, really in that sense, I just want to try and keep learning and keep expanding the things that I, and pursue things I'm fascinated by, and things that I maybe haven't done just yet.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I wanted to ask about the recording process of actual physical location. So clearly COVID hit, you're working from home, right? Am I assuming that correctly?
Yep.
Did you work from home prior to COVID ever? Did you record from home?
So the first 2 games I recorded from my apartment in New York. And then I moved to the Bay Area, where the studio is located, in, just at the beginning of Pyre, essentially. And I started working out of the office, and that was a transition for me, because I'd only worked from home before. I'd never worked in an office. So, and then, I kind of got used to that and was in the groove most of the way through Hades, and then the pandemic hit, and I had to sort of figure out how to work from home towards the end of the project. So,
right,
yeah,
you had like a vocal booth put in your house, like you had it
yes,
delivered,
it's
right
next to me here. Yeah, it takes up most of this room I'm in, unfortunately, but it's
nice. Yeah, between that and the drums, I'm like, how are you even in there? Like,
there's not a lot of wiggle room in here.
Yeah, I was curious because a lot of us had to learn how to work from home, and I remember seeing something through Noteclip that you did work from home in the past, and I think that probably positioned you pretty well to pivot better than most people who are in the workforce, right?
Yeah, and actually, most of us were already working from home on Fridays. We just had like people kind of work from home on Friday. So I had stuff that I was doing from home, but it was mostly just stuff that that was direct. Like I didn't need a mic, so like guitars and sometimes basses and stuff like that from home. And I have my electronic drum kit here, which I'd use to input all the drums. So I'd play the parts MIDI into and I'd do all that stuff here on Fridays. So I'd save drum day for Fridays, but yeah, I did have to adjust to like doing it all the time from home. It was a bit of an adjustment for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, quite a bit of time has passed since even we last sat down to talk last time.
Mm-hmm.
So I see your whole rig set up. I mean, what's going on? Have you put more audio inside of Hades since then?
No, I have not.
Okay. I was like, man, like,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
We've been busy. Yeah. I mean, we've been busy like porting to a million platforms and stuff. And I have a band that's like in my free time, I'll make stuff with them, a band called Control Group. And we just wrapped an album we're gonna send to mastering pretty soon. So I've been working on that. And
that was another question on the list. I literally had that written up. It's like, any chance we're gonna hear a new Control Group record soon? So
yeah, I mean, I think it's almost December, but like I'm gonna send it to mastering before the end of the year for sure.
Did you get to record that one with Steve Albini too?
No, we did not. That one, this one. So we recorded the drum tracks for this one before I moved away from New York in 2014.
Oh.
So we've had these drum tracks laying around for like 7 years, and it'll be almost exactly 7 years that it took us to make this album, because a year and a half would go by and I'd go and edit the drums, and then another year and a half would go by and we'd record some guitar overdubs, and it just took a while. And finally, during the pandemic, I finally thought, what, let's wrap up that album. Sitting at home a lot, maybe I'll work on this album. I got an analog synthesizer here. Let's see what I can do with that.
Yeah. Just like like Epic Breakdown. Just like a glorious, just one note synth. Just getting into it.
Lots of glide, lots of mono synth with glide and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It fools them every time. You know what I mean?
Got some some Cars influence and some stuff. Some fun.
Well, I'm excited to hear it. Are you guys going to print some vinyls for that one?
Probably not, because it's expensive, but we are gonna do a thing where all the proceeds go to charity and stuff like that. We're gonna do that again. So.
Awesome, that'll be rad. Well, I'll definitely check it out. I like you guys' band.
Awesome.
I've listened to them, and it's pretty rad.
Cool.
Jacob, I'm gonna ask your question for you, because this is a good one.
So,
what's a game franchise that currently exists that you would love to compose on?
I've gotten this question before, and it's such a weird one for me, because like a game franchise that I like and admire usually has music that I wouldn't touch because I think it's awesome, So I don't know that there is one specifically, because for me, it's like, if the music that's there is working and I like it already, I don't want any part of that,
So if Kaji Kondo or whatever, he was like, you know what, I'm not gonna make any Zelda music, and then Miyamoto calls you up and he's like, Darren, we have to have you come make some music for the new Zelda game. You'd be like, no, I'm done. No,
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, there's such a, I don't know, it just seems like a weird position to step into. I really admire people who can step into stuff like that, like Gordy Hobb and stuff, who like does all the Star Wars video game music and stuff. Like, that guy's amazing, because it's like, how do you even attempt to be like, oh, this is just like, this has to be believably like feel connected to John Williams music somehow. It's like, geez, man, what a tall order that would be.
And the same goes for those Star Wars stories like Rogue One and Solo. Like they have. I mean, it's a Star Wars movie. It's not John Williams though, right? And it's just it's hard to step in there. I'm curious on that note. Has there been any recent releases, soundtrack wise, or any music in games that you've just really dug in the last couple of years?
Yes. It's all a blur though. Let me see. Recent releases in games specifically, or movies.
Dune.
Dune. I thought Dune was cool. I mean, I thought the music was cool, and I really liked. I thought the Green Knight had a really interesting kind of atmospheric, funky score. Gosh, what else?
Have you checked out Spiritfarer by chance?
I have it. It's on my list. Yeah.
That's another one that I bought the vinyl for,
Cool.
and just from a music perspective, I highly recommend it. It's also a
Yeah.
great game. Made
Cool.
me cry, which if a
Yeah.
game can do that, it's
Pretty
a
good.
big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, I'll check that out. I've got it. I think I've got it installed and just haven't played it yet. Yeah.
I have another question too.
Mm-hmm.
So, how often would you say you get to play, like, does playing SuperGiant games feel kind of like work to you a little bit, or do you genuinely enjoy playing them, like, in your free time type thing?
I just thought of a game that I really liked. I like the Pathless. Austin's score for the Pathless was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that
Same
game,
guy
yeah.
who did Abzu and Journey,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
Austin.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce his last
Wintry.
name?
Wintry, yep.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. I want
Yeah,
to
his
make
score
sure I
was
had that right.
fantastic for that. So to answer this question, what was the question? One more time. And
Oh,
I'll
yes, of course.
answer. I just forgot.
This feels like kind of like bad. I don't want to like step on your toes, obviously, but like obviously you have to play the game like, to see if the music is going to fit.
Yeah.
So like, which is your favorite SuperGiant game to play, and which one are you best at?
I think the answer to both is probably Hades. Though I am pretty good at Pyre. On team, we had a few real ringers on the team, and I could hold my own on when we do our like one-on-ones on the team. But for Hades, I think I'm probably best at Hades, and I also enjoy playing it a ton just because it's so. All the other games we've made are very linear, more or less, and so once you play through it, you kind of are familiar with all the beats of the experience, and you can change some variables, and you have like, the idols and the equivalent of those things in all the games. But it's not quite the same as a game that is meant to support hundreds of hours of play, and I certainly have played Hades for hundreds of hours. And it's a blast. I love playing Hades. I haven't played it in a while, but I certainly like all the sort of testing and stuff I did, especially toward the end of the project, where I was making sure, playing for 10 hours a day for, a couple of weeks, just making sure the Switch build was all good and trying to look for weird audio bugs and stuff, it's a blast. I mean, I really enjoyed it.
That's super refreshing to hear because, like, for me, I think about, like, I have moved into audio video production, for work.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to kind of make my way eventually into the games industry, right? We talked about this last time, so I'm taking a step to do that. And I thought I would be worried at first about like moving into a field that I already am so passionate about. Like, anyways, like I tell people like, like I'm like a sound geek, and I'm always trying to like learn it and do better with it. And, kind of, and I think you can kind of, you said something, you made a joke earlier about like, you're a grouch. I totally feel like I'm the same way. Like someone says like, oh, that sounds great. I'm like, get out. Like, you're an idiot. No. But it's always refreshing to hear someone talk about being day in and day out with like the exact same project or the exact same thing, and being able to like feel like they can approach it even from a leisure standpoint and still enjoy it. And it's like, like this is what I did for work, and like this is what I did for a living for this particular thing, but I also genuinely enjoy doing this. Obviously I'm not going to love playing Hades every single day, but because I don't think playing anything every single day is great, but unless it's Halo Infinite. But it's refreshing to hear you talk about like, no, I love it. It's super fun, and I love the experience. Jacob, do you want to say something? Go for it.
No, well, I was just agreeing.
Okay,
with you.
I was okay. Good.
And one of the things that is really important to us when we're figuring out what kind of project we want to do next, or when we're setting out to make a game, it's really important to us that everybody on the team is into the idea of it, because it's going to be a thing that you're going to be doing for years. Multiple years of your life are going to be dedicated to this thing, and so you got to be into it, because if you're not into it, you'll be able to feel that in the game, and people won't be jazzed about working on it. If you're excited about the thing you're working on, that is going to carry you through. I mean, game development is hard and it takes a long time, and the thing that carries you through that challenge is the excitement for the thing you're making.
When I love hearing you say that too, because as this wacky world kind of moves into like a different place year after year, like a big thing, nowadays is like with like NFTs. There's like a lot of projects that have like really cool purposes and like really cool backgrounds and like really specific artwork, music, all kinds of things that like speak directly to the audience. And there's people in the community and all these podcasts and stuff like that talking about like, oh yeah, like you can tell if like a project's legit because you can feel if it's authentic or not, and like they're talking about it like it's like a new concept, and I'm like, dude, we've literally been seeing this for decades with video games now. You don't think we can sense inauthenticity if a developer is really invested in the project or not? No. Like, come on, you know what I mean? And it's cool to hear you say that, because it's nice to know that process is like, it's like whenever a band goes, like, it's like the Foo Fighters going on tour. You know what I mean? It's like, we're doing this for like 4 years, like this one record. You know what I mean? Like, let's freaking go, like, forever. And it's nice to know that you guys haven't. It's nice to know you guys haven't lost any zeal for the project you're already currently on. But it's also, I asked you last time you were here, like, what's going on? Like, what else you guys doing? What else are you guys doing next? And you're like, we don't know. And I think that's perfectly fine to. Whatever you guys make next, I'm sure it's going to be incredible. So it's nice to know you guys are just kind of doing your own thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
Just to quickly interject there, the thing that's really important, I think one of the main things that's really important to us is that we stick together as a team and keep making games. And when we're working on a project, we in general don't think too far ahead on purpose. Just so we can kind of fully just have blinders on a little bit and just focus on that thing. Because if we start to daydream about other stuff, it can be a real distraction. So we tend to be like very single project focused, and then after that we kind of figure it out and go from there.
On the topic of synergy, I just have to say, after playing through these games so close together, the synergy is so clear because they're such a SuperGiant style, right? And that comes from, it sounds like every team member just working in tandem consistently throughout the games. I mean, there's no question here. I'm just stating that it's very clear to me, as someone who just experienced these games close together, that of game developers, the SuperGiant style it's there. It's a thing. Awesome. And I absolutely love it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it was even for me, dipping my toes into each game as they were kind of coming out, maybe not necessarily devoting the time to beating them, because I say I'm a huge SuperGiant fan, and I am, especially even more so now, but my love was always with the Bastion, and so now kind of having the entire picture and like experiencing all these things for myself, it's like, I totally agree with Jacob. Like, you can, it's that band that has that one of a kind sound. It's like whenever Radiohead comes on, two things happen. One, unequivocally it is Radiohead, no matter whether it's going to be Kid A or the King of Limbs, you're like, oh, well, that's really weird. And also, you cannot explain it to anybody. You just have to experience it. And I think that's what SuperGiant has really set the bar in. And like, literally, I have things where I'll be playing a AAA game, and I'm like, have the people that made this game, have they played like any of SuperGiant's games? Because like, even, and that, it's not always great to compare, indie developers and stuff, but there have been times where I would play a game, it's like, I hate this, like, and I just don't, and it would receive like a lot of critical acclaim, and I just wouldn't understand it, because my first indie game ever was Bastion, so my mind immediately goes there. So kind of having like that one of a kind experience, kind of go through all of your guys' games, it's really speaks to a testament of how devoted you guys are and how well you all execute. So
thank you. That's
I wanted to piggyback off Jacob, though. Yeah, of course. We're I don't think you should have expected anything less. I'm like one of the biggest SuperGiant fans on the planet. So, and now so is Jacob. So
awesome.
Yep, absolutely.
So it's been about an hour. I said we wouldn't take too much of your time, and believe it or not, if I'm lying, I'm dying. We got through all the questions that we had written. Look at that. We keep the conversation going. So, Jacob, do you have anything else before we wrap this thing up?
Just general thank you to Darren. That was amazing. And I'm a huge fan of your work and excited to see what's next.
Awesome. Thank you.
Same. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on again. Darren to a different show, and who knows, maybe next year I'll reach out to you again and we'll see if we can get you back on for another one. I mean, I'll probably try. Like, let's just be real. I'll probably reach out to you again. So anyways, it was a blast to have you on, and yeah, just thank you so much, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, take care and you have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.